bought into that. Anybody who knows anything at all, the most basic, rudimentary information on Iran would tell you that they're not going to see us as liberators. They're going to see us as invaders and occupiers. And not just that, but the Israelis. The Iranians believe that the Israeli government came out of the fires of hell. They're not going to welcome them as liberators. And I don't care what these Iranian Americans in Beverly Hills say, because they're not mainstream Iranians with their Shah flags.
You mean Patrick Bet David?
You know, I like Patrick. He's a nice guy, but he's wrong on this issue.
Yeah.
He's just wrong.
Isn't it true that a lot of the Iranian population like Israel?
No.
It's not true?
It's true that a lot of the Iranian Jewish population likes Israel. And they're very vocal. The Iranian Jewish community in Southern California is gigantic. And it's very, very wealthy.
Interesting.
And so they have, I was just in LA last week. They've got billboards, you know, welcoming Reza Pahlavi to return. I've gotten a lot of threats lately because I said on a podcast, and I meant it, and I'm going to repeat it, that Reza Pahlavi is a clown, number one. He doesn't want to go back to Iran. He said so to Patrick Bet David. He's like, I've been here since 1979. My kids are Americans. I have my life. It's in McLean. So I said, I don't know what the heck it was. I'm not saying it was Little Green Men. I honestly don't know what it was. It very well could have been some DARPA thing. I mean, we don't have any military bases in the area, but who knows?
Tough, old-time guy. Yeah. And on Wednesday of that week, we got into an argument, and I called him a racist. He got so mad, he balled up his fists, and he took a stand. And I remember thinking to myself, damn it, I went too far this time. And I put up my hands to block the punch. I knew the punch was coming. And he goes,
my penis is bigger than yours.
I said, you know what? I said, you're nuts. You're nuts.
And I quit.
And I walked out. The first time I ever considered the notion of a deep state, I still remember it.
Just joining the CIA. World's one of the famous stories, Aldrich Ames. He was a double agent from...
Aldrich Ames. Oh, yeah, that was a little bit later. Yeah. He was caught in, 93, 94. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, major traitor.
Were you aware while you were in the CIA about that story?
Absolutely not.
Nothing. It was
Nobody was.
Totally.
There is literally nothing more compartmentalized than counterintelligence operations.
Wow.
They're the most highly classified, highly compartmentalized operations that exist.
And then after that, Richard Hansen, FBI.
You know, Hansen hit close to home. I had a great friend who was one of the mole hunters at the CIA, Brian Kelly. Brian is dead now. Hansen was the chief mole hunter at the FBI, but he was the mole.
He was the mole, yeah. So
what he did was, it's complicated. Our sources inside Russia began dying, right? They'd get arrested and then they would start dying. That frightens me. You know, there were a couple of explosive revelations in the last tranche. The fact that James Angleton, the deputy director for counterintelligence, wanted to formally recruit Lee Harvey Oswald is exactly the opposite of what the CIA has been telling us for so many years.
Yes.
For 60 years. Why? If the Russians came to the conclusion that he was just a nut when he was living in Minsk and didn't want him to come back, why was the CIA interested in recruiting him? What was he doing in Mexico City in October of 1963? He said, or not he said, but the CIA has said over the years that he was there to go to the Cuban and Soviet embassies to try to get visas. Why was he meeting with Americans? And were those American CIA officers? Of course they were. Why else would he have gone to Mexico City?
Yes.
I'm actually more interested in the RFK and the MLK documents. There is so much that we don't know about those two, especially RFK. They recovered one more bullet than Sirhan's gun held. And Thomas Noguchi.
And this is confirmed.
Yes. And Thomas Noguchi.
Well, then that's kind of case closed. Then
there it is.
Right. I mean, we don't know what happened. We know the official explanation is untrue.
It's untrue. So
because it was a revolver, it was a 22 caliber revolver.
Correct.
It's like a 9-shot.
That's right.
22s fit a lot in the cylinder.
But the assassination of Ayman al-Zawahiri, the number 2 in Al-Qaeda.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we shot him with a
drone-launched
missile.
Right?
The missile had no warhead on it.
Right? We did that on purpose because we didn't want to kill the women and children inside the apartment. He came out onto the balcony to smoke a cigarette.
Fired the missile at him. It went completely through his body. A missile went completely through his body. And with no warhead, there was no explosion.
Can you imagine cleaning up that mess?
So I can't really give you a... Some countries didn't have satellites at the time. So as this example of a false flag, the Israelis really, really wanted to know what was going on in the port of Benghazi in Libya. Well, they don't have a satellite to look at the port of Benghazi. So what they did is they had a Mossad officer call the harbor master on the phone in Benghazi and say, "Hi, I'm a wealthy French businessman, and we do a lot of work in Libya, a lot of trade, and I represent a consortium of European businessmen. We have lots and lots of money, and we're looking for somebody to represent our interests in Benghazi, somebody who has access to the port and understands how the port works, and we have tons of money that we're willing to spend." Well, what's the port master going to say? Harbor master. He's going to say, "I could do that." "Oh, you would do that for us? You would be our consultant. We're going to pay you a lot of money. All we want to know is the names of the ships that come in every day and everything that's on the manifests." Okay, that's protected information. Does the information include weapons for Palestinian training camps in Libya? Of course they do. What about technologies from North Korea or from Pakistan or, any other?
It's painted red, and it has some rust spots over the rear wheels.
Then what do you see? The back door's open. I see 2 motorcycles and 2 men inside. I said, "Can you see a license plate?" This freaks me out. Oh, I got chills just thinking about it. I said, "Can you see a license plate?" He says, "Yes." And he's like this with his eyes closed. I said, "What does the license plate say?" And he goes.
And then he reads off the plate.
So I write it down. I hand it to my colleague. He goes into the other room and he calls headquarters. He says, "We need to run a plate ASAP." So headquarters sends an immediate cable out to the field. Call liaison, run this plate right now.
I'm glad things turned out for you. I'm glad that they worked out for you because you stuck to your guns. You knew that you were right. You knew that you were telling the truth. So congratulations.
"Oh my God, I'm sorry. I thought you're gay." And I said, "Oh no, I am gay."
I'm not into hairy guys.
I'll give you another example. I've never told this story before.
Third, his wife is cheating on him with her French personal trainer. And everybody knows about it. And it's in the pictures of them together in the French media all the time. So, no, these religious people in Iran are not going to welcome him. And I said, if he were to return to Iran, he wouldn't survive the walk from the plane to the terminal, let alone to come and, here I am, the Shahanshah, to liberate my people.
Why
No.
wouldn't he survive?
Because they hate him.
Why do they hate him?
Because his father created SAVAK, the dreaded, feared Iranian intelligence service that would scoop you off the street and they'd find your head on one side of town and the rest of your body on the other.
Whoa.
His father overthrew the only democratically elected prime minister in the history of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, 1953, with the CIA and MI6.
Right.
So there's no love except for the royalists and these Jewish American Iranians, mostly in Southern California. There is no love of this family, the Pahlavis. And I mean, they stole the country's riches, everything they could pack on their plane in February of 1979. There's a revolution in the streets. The Shah and the entire royal family decide to go skiing in Switzerland. And then they never went back because they took all their, gold bars and their gems and jewels and Picassos and loaded it all on the plane. Mm-hmm. And what, now after 50 years?
Right.
It was one specific meeting. And there was one guy who was the NIO, the National Intelligence Officer for Warning. So he's supposed to be the guy that's looking 5, 10, 20 years down the line saying, I think that
Bolivia is going to be a problem for us 20 years from now.
But anyway, people were congratulating him. And I asked somebody, I said, why is everybody congratulating him? Oh, he got an age waiver from the director. And I said, what's that mean? Oh, he's allowed to work until he's 70.
I was like, 70?
How old is he now? He's 65. He's been in this job for
42 years.
And he's going to stay for another 5 years. And I was like, why would anybody want to be in a job for 47 years, the same job? Well, because that's the power that you've built. That's the authority that you've built. Presidents come and go. How many presidents are going to come and go over the course of this guy's 47-year CIA career? So he knows.
Historical. You should write this down because I think the American people need to hear your recollections. He said on the day that his uncle was killed, November 22nd, 1963, his mom picked him up at school early. It was like 2:30. It was minutes after the assassination. And they drove back to their home in McLean, Virginia. It was called Hickory Hill. It was a glorious, 40-acre spread with a mansion on the top of the hill. And when they pulled into the driveway, his dad was standing there talking to John McCone. John McCone was the director of the CIA. The Kennedys and the McCones were very, very close. They were both devoutly Catholic. And then 6 months earlier, Mrs. McCone died of breast cancer. And the Kennedys were genuinely worried that John McCone might do something to harm himself. And so they had him over to dinner 7 nights a week just to keep an eye on him. And then after dinner, he and Bobby Kennedy Sr. would go swimming together. So Bobby Jr. and his mom pull into the driveway. He gets out of the car. He's walking past his dad and he's looking at his dad. And he hears his dad say to McCone, "Tell me your people didn't do this." And McCone says, "I don't know who did it." He didn't say, "Wow, of course my people didn't do it. Why would you even ask such a thing like that?" He said, "I don't know who did it." So he said he always believed it was the CIA. I always believed it was elements of the CIA. But I'm coming up to my most important point. So I have a friend who is close to the president. And I said to him at the time that the documents were released, about a year ago, I said, thank God that...
I did not know that.
Yeah. And Thomas Noguchi, the coroner, said that the death shot came from behind.
Yep.
At an angle from down on the ground. But Sirhan was in front of him.
Yes.
There was a security guard there who was not associated with the Kennedy campaign or with the
Ambassador Hotel.
Yeah, the Ambassador Hotel, named Caesar.
Mm-hmm.
He was a well-known racist and white supremacist. On video, you see him lifting a gun out of his belt, and then you hear bang, 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 and he puts it back in the belt. He never got it fully out. In the 90s, the National Geographic Channel tracked him down to Mississippi or Alabama or something, and they interviewed him. And they said, "Did you shoot Robert Kennedy?" And he said, "No, I was going to, but that Arab fella got him first." Well, we know that there had to be somebody else in the kitchen at the Ambassador. And we know that the shot came from behind. We know that there was a second gun because there were too many bullets. So why hasn't this been released? Are sleeper agents real? Yes, they are. And the country that is the best at using sleeper agents is Russia. The United States doesn't have a program of sleeper agents, and I'm frankly unaware of any Western intelligence service that has sleeper agents or that uses sleeper agents. The Russians have an army of sleeper agents. In fact, just in the last 2 or 3 years, a group of